Perfect Pop Podcast.
As part of the Perfect Pop Podcast, the weekly edition, we are doing interviews, of course. And this little section is now going to be sponsored, as of now, by Madhouse Coffee. And we're going to be having a coffee and a chat, because that's always really important to have coffees and chats. Well, it is to me anyway. This time, we're going to be speaking to Spencer Berger, a man I haven't actually spoken to it's going to be getting on to about 14 years. It's like 13 years, 8 months or something. Now, this is a gentleman we used to play a hell of a lot back in the Recharge Radio days. He got his fair share of love out of us, and then when we all sort of didn't do anything, Spencer was ridiculously lazy as well, and he didn't put out anything. And then all of a sudden, he emails me the other day, and he puts out a perfectly titled album called Life Changer. And at that point, my life changed, and I realised I had to speak to him again. Spencer, hello, how are you?
Hello. Delighted to talk to you after all this time.
It has been some time, hasn't it? Now, here's a question. Why are you such a slow worker? Because the reason there's a genuine question here. So, Andy of our ilk over here, I mean, he can write and has actually done 365 songs to do a release a day. But then there's some people like yourself that you will take a long time to put something out. I mean, I'm not saying whether that's that's a good thing or a bad thing, but why does it take you so long to put something out?
Yeah, I should make an appointment with a therapist to talk about this. But I absolutely have always been this way. And the funny thing is that my songwriting hero is Robert Pollard of Guided by Voices fame. And that guy has released thousands of songs, and I'm nothing at all like him. On the one hand, I could make the argument that it's because I record everything by myself, but there are people who record everything, all the parts by themselves, and they're, a zillion times faster than me. I think what it really has to do with is that I definitely am an obsessive perfectionist, and also I don't write very many songs that I'm a huge fan of myself.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, what were you saying about the perfectionist side of things? If you have somebody that is very prolific, and you see them doing all of this stuff, and you're a massive fan of them, it's almost like if you go, oh well, I could never do that. I could never do something that is that good. So if it is, oh well, I've got to be as good as that. And so if you do write something, you go, no, it's not as good as that. No, it's not as good as that. No, it's not as good as that. And then you just ends up with, you've probably got an entire back catalogue of work that people will go, you know what, that's really, really good. But then you'll just go, no, it's not. It just really isn't.
Well, yeah, I've got, I have, thousands of unreleased songs. Not all of them are finished, of course, but songs that I started and maybe I got 70% of the way through and then abandoned. But yeah, I think for me, it also has to, and I'm curious to hear your perspective, like when you're working on a song, but it used to be that when I would write a song, I would compare myself, compare to the bands that I love, compare to the bands that were my heroes. And then I, after a while, realized I'm never going to sound like those bands that I love, and that's okay. And so I sort of let go of that. And then it became about, just trying to write something basically that didn't already exist. Like imagining, okay, if there was a band that doesn't exist yet and it was making music that I wanted to listen to. And that's sort of how I approach it, just trying to write a song that isn't there yet, that is like, you know what, I'd like to listen to that.
I always think that some musicians, and I'm going to chuck myself into that particular mix, I don't want to sort of serve anybody else apart from myself, because I think sometimes you've got to kind of be realistic about this sort of thing. You've got to say, well, there's a whole plethora of independent artists out there, and you can't be writing the next I don't know, next Springsteen album, because it's not like that, is it? So you've got to save yourself first, and if anybody else comes along and likes it, then it's like, oh, hey, great, marvelous, that's a bonus.
I totally agree with that. Like I definitely, I mean, yes, I have in mind. I know Stephen King, the author, he talks about ideal reader when he's writing, and I do definitely always have my wife in the back of my head, because she's the poor soul who has to always listen to these put up with it all. And then she is the first person who I ever show anything that I've actually finished to. I usually don't even show her works in progress, but in the back of my head, I will be imagining her listening. But even her, I can't try to even please her when I'm ready. Son, to your point, I sort of march along just focusing on trying to entertain myself. And if I can somehow do that.
Isn't that sort of the plight of anybody that's trying to sort of please the other half of their relationship? That's will I please that other person? Maybe. I don't know. I just want to sort of take a step to the side, I guess, and talk, because when you did your initial stuff, I remember I actually listened back to the first interview that we ever did the other day.
Yeah.
Which you had to remind me about that we did. I completely forgot, but then I listened to it. I was like, oh yeah, I remember talking about that. Yeah. But you made it. You had to say, well, I had to do things a certain way, because obviously you didn't play the drums, and you had to do things in a certain rhythmic sort of way.
Yeah.
What sort of changed? Because of course this new album, it does have a definite percussion section on it. I mean, all the choral singing elements are there, but it does have an extra element.
Yeah, well, yeah, Auditorium has sort of always my music has always been defined by my limitations. So, when I did the first album, Be Brave, I didn't know how to even think about approaching percussion, but I felt confident about playing guitar and singing and dabbling a little with bass. And this is now 12 years ago. And so that's how the whole sound of that first album came about, was just, okay, I can't do this, but I can do this. and so that became the sound. And I had a lot of fun. That album was incredibly useful for sort of learning what I am capable of and what I'm incapable of. And what I had a lot of fun experimenting with, especially on that album, was layering things in what's probably a weird way, but, layering vocals, lots of harmonies, layering guitars on top of each other. And I came up with a sound that seemed to work to my ear for those songs. And then basically, you skip ahead 6 years to the release of the second album, which was the first music. And on that album, if you listen to it, I've started to introduce percussion a bit, because I've been experimenting with percussion over those 6 years. So it made its way in. And I also was just, I grew up playing electric guitar, and that hadn't played a role on the first Auditorium album. So that made its way into the second album. And then you skip ahead another 6 years. And yeah, I had developed, by the time I reached this album, I'd finally achieved enough confidence with experimenting with percussion to include it. So yeah, anytime you hear one of these recordings, it's simply because I've reached a point where I felt I could do it in a way that at least didn't sound embarrassing enough to my own ear to delete it.
There's a thread that seems to sort of start running through all of your music, Spencer. It's if you're not 100% with it, you won't do it. Is that a fair assessment?
It's fair that I won't release it if I don't feel confident about it, because I love to experiment. I love to do. I mean, as I mentioned, I have thousands of experiments that I've never shown anyone, and I love. Quite honestly, my favorite part of making music is experimenting, is going down paths that I'm not confident about, and usually by going down that path, if I go down enough paths like that, I'll sort of stumble onto something that I wouldn't have done before and figure out a way to do something that I hadn't done before.
The first single that you put out was I've had to make a note here because I've got to read this. Cedars Sinai Cafeteria Breakdown. I mean that's a title and a half. But when I got sent this, or I put it on YouTube, and I thought, oh, this is great. He's back. He's great. He's doing stuff. It's marvelous. I'm going to read some of the comments underneath this, which are, as far as I'm concerned, that they seem to be just random people. I mean, I have no idea how I even got here, but this shit kind of slaps. That's a compliment, right? Came here after like 5 seconds of an Instagram ad. Oh, you see it down with the kids there. You're on Instagram. This is so good. And then another one. Same comment as chap up here. This shit slaps, bro. When you start getting comments back like that, it's a fairly crowded world out there. So to actually get those those sort of impromptu little reviews on YouTube, that's going to be good, right? Oh,
well, yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, there's nothing more delightfully surprising than when another human being actually likes, something you've created. And I honestly it's meaningful to me every single time. Like, that has never gotten old to me. If there's another human being who actually, in some way appreciates. It's funny. I got a message from somebody a few weeks ago, and it was as if they'd pried open my skull and looked into my brain, because they said, I don't know if you're the sort of person who wonders if you've made a difference in one person's life, and if that's the sort of thing that gets you excited. But and then they went on to say that the music was meaningful to them, and I wrote back, immediately. I was like, "Oh, that's it." I mean, honestly, if there's a human being out there who it actually is meaningful to, I'm pretty sure that's fairly universal for almost anybody who creates any form of art.
Yeah, well, I think just sort of talking about the connection. I think you can have now as an independent artist, because we've been when you and I first spoke, the world of independent music, it was still in this whole sort of, oh, you either signed or you're not, or you unsigned, and if you're unsigned, you've got to be signed, and all this sort of stuff. And fast forward, like I said, on over a decade later, and you are. You're sort of sitting there and you're thinking it doesn't really matter, because of course one of the things that you can't get from a signed artist. I mean, we're gonna put together put the little independent labels just over to one side there, because I realise the irony of saying that by doing this as part of a record labels podcast. But if someone sends you a message and they say, I like your music, and you write back and you say, thank you, that's really, really cool. I appreciate you saying that. That'll make their day.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny, because I most of the artists that I grew up listening to and admiring, of course, never had to even think about social media. It wasn't a thing. And I've heard, various artists talk about this. I heard Billy Corgan talking about how if the Smashing Pumpkins had to be a successful band right now, he doesn't think it would have happened. He doesn't think that he just doesn't believe that he had the skill set that to get the music out there in the way that, because now essentially a musician has to be their own record label and their own spokesperson and their own publicist, and that's just expected. I mean, honestly, the engaging with fans part I find very simple and wonderful. Because if somebody takes the time to write to me, I genuinely want to write back to them. The part that I find I have found very, very challenging over the years was sort of the expectation of creating a certain amount of content to be shared on social media platforms, and all of those kinds of expectations that artists have nowadays. And it's really only in the last, over the past year, that I sort of took a deep breath and was like, okay, how can I approach this in a way that doesn't feel like I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it, just posting something on Instagram because the powers that be have told me that that's what you're supposed to do.
That's that's what the algorithm demands.
Yeah, and so what I did was I reached out to my friend. It's always good to have somebody who's very talented in a way that you are not talented. So I have a really great friend. His name's Ben Barnes, not to be confused with the actor whose name is Ben Barnes. But Ben Barnes is this just incredibly talented visual artist, and we've collaborated together on stuff in the past. And I said, well, what could we do that's like, something that actually feels like it isn't ridiculously out of step with the music that I'm creating, but that could be put on.
This is something I was going to get on to asking you about. What's with the rabbits?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to talk to Ben. You need a whole other interview with Ben to get into the rabbits. But basically, Ben and I, like, our working relationship is really fantastic because I'll just give him music and then he'll do whatever the hell he wants with that music. And so he created a series of lyric videos. Some of them are more low tech than others, but he has such a kind of unique visual sensibility that he was able to kind of create a bunch of stuff that I was like, this actually feels very unique. And I want to share this. I want to post this on Instagram. I want to do all this stuff that I don't generally want to do. And yeah, the Cedar Sinai Cafeteria Breakdown song, that's the most involved little video that he created was for that particular song.
Well, it really is fantastic because, you get into the characters and I assume that's all his art style. That's, sort of very...
That is all him.
Yeah, it's good. It really is good, I mean, I always think it feels slightly disingenuous sort of sitting here and just going, oh, it's all marvellous, oh, it's all great. But, when you're looking at it, I mean, you get into those little rabbits' characters' heads and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I want to know.
I want to know too.
I'm invested. Well, that makes two of us then. Let's ask him. Let's get him on. This is the first interview of 2024. How exciting. But what's your plans for this year? Because, you brought this album out in the autumn. The fall. You see, if I say the fall, people immediately think, oh, that's Marky Smith, right? And it's like, no, I'm just translating for an American audience. Hey, whatever. Aside, what are you planning? What are you planning for this year?
Just, well, like I said, I'm experimenting a lot right now with new ideas, and we'll see. My hope, I do have a bunch of songs that I have kind of been working on that I've been working on honestly for over the last couple of years, because by the time I got to the songs that made it onto the most recent album, by the time I'd started recording those songs, I was already writing a bunch of other stuff. So we'll see. My hope is to, in the same way that I said, I don't want to put stuff on social media just for the sake of putting stuff on social media. I am interested in seeing if there are, rather than releasing full-length albums, if there are singles that I feel proud enough to release on a more regular basis. I would like to experiment with that.
Spencer, it's been a pleasure. If you have touched someone in a legal and correct manner via your music, where can they find out more about your business?
Well, you could go to auditoriummusic.com. That's a good catch-all. But I'm on Instagram. It's Auditorium Music.
Yeah, and also check out all of the awesome videos on the Tube of You as well. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Go and check out Auditorium's YouTube channel. Since we did that interview, a whole bunch more videos have gone up there, so go make yourself aware of the rabbits. It's great. The interviews on the weekly podcast are sponsored by Madhouse Coffee, and you can find out more about those guys over at madhousetattoo.co.uk/madhousecoffee. Anyway, about time we played the track by Auditorium now, or Spencer, and this is the aforementioned Cedar Sinai Cafeteria Breakdown.